Welcome to Rewilding Love. This season is with a couple on the brink of divorce.
This is episode 20, an interview with George and Linda Pransky.
If we're both in a low mood, we run for the hills.
I can ask him for an apology. From my perspective, no matter how high your level of understanding gets, you still have ups and downs.
It's okay if we take things personally, but that doesn't mean that we can't work it out.
It's to do with state of mind, just period. It's all state of mind.
Now when I get impatient with you, it just doesn't even affect you.
I felt like I had to set the record straight.
So you've got to be philosophically bald.
When you get in a certain state of mind, there's always something to criticize.
Yeah, I'm thinking, why is she on my case?
We were just constantly having low mood conversations.
I can say, let's get it a bit hairy for my liking.
You can kind of relax into the relationship.
So anytime you're tense, I know you're struggling.
Even though our relationship in some ways was just a big old mess, we saw our learning curve.
One of the fondest memories for me is you with your overalls.
It's the hum of fondness. You are listening to Rewilding Love with me, Angus Ross.
And me, Rohini Ross.
Rewilding Love is a podcast about relationships.
We believe that love never disappears completely in relationships. It can always be rewilded.
Listen in as we speak with our guests about how they share the understanding behind the rewilding metaphor in their work.
And how it has helped them in their relationships.
Relax and enjoy the show.
I'm so grateful that we get to have George and Linda Pransky on this episode. I felt like it was a really beautiful, informal conversation, like we were sitting with them in their living room.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have them on our podcast because I feel like they were instrumental in changing our lives quite radically.
Absolutely. George and Linda Pransky have been sharing this understanding for over 40 years, and they are teachers and mentors. And what they have shared with us had a dramatic impact on our relationship, transforming it from a pretty conflictual relationship, is that how you would describe it?
I would.
To one that has a lot more love, peace, kindness, generosity in it, and that actually allows us to work together now.
Yeah, and a week doesn't go by, probably a day doesn't go by without me referencing one of their teaching points or stories. So they're very influential in the work that we do, I feel.
And you'll hear them mention Syd in the podcast episode, and they're referring to Syd Banks, who was their teacher, and they learned from him, and he helped transform their lives as well as the lives of many other people.
And you'll also hear their cat, if you listen carefully, which I want to point out. Rohini's response to the cat meowing was one of glee, which was diametrically opposed to her response when I took a sip of my tea, when she looked at me with very, shall I say, with daggers. It was not something that she felt terribly impressed by, let's say. And yet the cat meowing is perfectly okay, because I hasten to add, Rohini is a big cat lover, so a cat can do no wrong. But little old Angus sipping his mug of tea was entirely problematic.
Yes, there is a fair amount of background noise in some of the segments of this episode, so you'll just have to go with the living room feel.
I guess as far as I'm concerned, I feel like there's a zero tolerance for background noise. And I am a bit fidgety, I have to say. But they were given a very wide berth on that front, including the cat.
Well, they're the guests. You're my co-host.
Okay.
Do you really think you should be sipping tea and banging it on the table?
Oh, was it? I didn't even realize I banged it on the table. I thought it was the noise that I made gulping it down, which I nearly choked on.
It was the clanking on the table.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought it was the gulping noise that you didn't like.
I didn't notice the gulping.
Oh, how funny. There you go, separate realities.
We should have a contest to see if people can give us a timestamp for the cat meow.
That's right. Yeah, there should be a prize, and the prize should be the relationship handbook. So the first person that contacts us and lets us know at what point the cat mewed. Did it mewed or did it meow?
It meow. It meowed. It meowed.
Mewed is past tense, right?
Meowed.
Meow. Oh, I don't know. I'm really confused. Does a cat?
Meows.
It never mews.
I think it mews too.
Oh, it has a different octave to it. A mew as opposed to meow, or actually meows 2 syllables. Maybe there's a whole cat language we're not even aware
What's the
of.
prize and how do they get it?
Sorry, I completely gone off on a tangent. Well, they get the prize if they can let us know when the cat meowed and at what point.
So the prize is George Pransky's book, The Relationship Handbook.
Yes.
Wow, we're going spontaneous, impromptu in the moment.
Yeah.
And just because I like to be clear, are you saying it's one prize for the first person?
Yes, only one book.
Okay.
Let's not go crazy.
And the first person that lets us know the correct time that the cat meows?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, I like that.
Should we go to the episode now?
Yes, I think that would be appropriate.
One of the themes that we got a lot of questions on was about not taking things personally in relationships and how that's helpful. And I think sometimes people have trouble understanding that and what that means. And we've obviously spoken to it in the way we speak to it, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are about not taking things personally in relationship and how that helps.
From my view, really, I think that taking things personally is really a big part of my mood. If my mood is up, I tend not to take things personally. If my mood is down, I tend to take things personally. So so when I'm surprised sometimes about how, I will take something personally and then actually I'll go, oh yeah, I must be kind of as an indicator of my mood. But what's also true is that George and I are close enough and on each other's side enough. We're not in competition. We're not competing for anything. So I can ask him for an apology. And I could say, that really hurt my feelings. He'll go, I'm sorry. And that will do it for me. It's so easy for me to ask him for what I want. And I don't always know that people in relationships feel comfortable to just say, look, that hurt my feelings. You owe me not that you owe me an apology, but I'd like an apology. That would help me out. And I don't know that couples feel comfortable doing that. And George and I feel really comfortable kind of getting in a skirmish and then asking for an apology, which is really a way of saying, did you mean it? Did you mean to say that?
Yeah.
An apology really is kind of shorthand for, did you mean to say that? Or did you mean to say something else? So when I do take something personally, it's really easy for me to say to him, take that back. And he does. He says, oh, no, I take it back. I didn't, mean it to come across the way you thought it came across. Now, I know that if I was better, I understood more. If my level of consciousness was higher, I'm imagining this. I'm thinking, if my level was higher, if I understood more, I wouldn't need to do that. But I don't know, because I really do see it as mood related.
Yeah.
And I think from my perspective, no matter how high your level of understanding gets, you still have ups and downs.
Yeah.
So that's my answer.
I love that. It really, there's some real gentleness in being able to accept wherever we're at and understand that it's okay if we get caught up. It's okay if we take things personally, but that doesn't mean that we can't work it out.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I know what I'd love to be able to work that out when I'm in a low mood. I'd love to be able to work that out on my own. And sometimes I do. But it really helps me to say to George, did you mean it?
Yeah.
Really helps me. And you too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sometimes, like when he's down and I say something, he says, did you? And I can tell it hits him wrong. He takes it personally. He'll say to me, did you mean that? I go, no, I didn't mean, there's no way that I would mean something to hurt you or make you feel bad. And if I did intentionally do it, it was my bad.
Yeah.
Because that would mean that I was really in a low place.
And what about if you're both in a low mood? And is it a case of just waiting for someone else to settle, or you just trust that someone will settle and equilibrium will be restored?
Here's the deal about that. When we're both in a low mood, it doesn't take us long to recognize it. There's a quality of interaction that we have when we're both in a low mood that we like see it, and basically we just separate.
Yeah.
We go to our corner.
Yeah, I mean, there's, because we've learned over time that there's a certain quality of conversation or interaction that happens when we're both in a low mood. And we kind of simultaneously wake up to it and go, oh, and then we just split.
Yeah.
Another way you could say is that if we're both in a low mood, we run for the hills. Because we just know when we're both up to no good. We register and we go to our corners because we know that we're in or over our heads.
I love that, in over our heads.
Yeah.
Run for the hills when you're in over your head.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think a lot of people get caught up with, their position of righteousness and that they can't see the mood that they're in or the state of mind that they're in, and will defend their cause to the death.
Yeah.
And will always say, but on some level, and I think when we work with couples, they still want to maintain their rights and their wrong. And if only they would change. And it's a hard nut for them to swallow, that it's all about state of mind when fundamentally my partner's wrong.
Yeah.
Interestingly, like our relationship has changed in that when I would get reactive, when I get upset, he'd take it personal. He doesn't anymore. And I can see it. I'll be upset about something and I'll be talking to him and I can see he's just not, it just is not getting affected by my upset.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed that?
No, actually I haven't.
Really?
Yeah. That's new. That's new to me.
No, but I've commented to you, like when I've gotten impatient with you.
Oh, yeah.
When I've gotten impatient with you in the past, I could tell you would react with annoyance, right? Or some form of upset. Now, when I get impatient with you, it just doesn't even affect you. How do you see that differently? Before you took it personally and now you don't. What is the anatomy of that?
Well, I see. If you get upset,
mm-hmm.
I see it as, it means that Linda took it personally.
So if I get impatient with you,
yeah,
because that's where I see the change, is when I get impatient with you, you just doesn't even ruffle your feathers because you see what's
behind it. So,
and what's behind it?
What's behind it is that Linda's struggling with the way I'm dealing with life. Nothing to do with me.
Like I'm struggling with you.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't have anything to do with you.
Yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with me.
Oh, that's interesting.
So all it is that
you see me as struggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, what did you see before?
Well, before, I felt like I had to set the record straight.
And you mean like you weren't doing anything wrong or something
Yeah.
like that?
Yeah, I'm thinking, why is she on my case? I didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And I would feel like I had to set the record straight.
And now you just see me as struggling.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can tell you that you're struggling because you're tight. You're tense.
Tense, yeah.
So anytime you're tense, I know you're struggling. Whereas before, that wasn't enough for me. I had to figure out how I wasn't
the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Or how I wasn't contributing to the problem. Whereas now, I would say, what difference does it make if Linda's not the problem? Why does that matter?
It's such a huge shift in awareness, though. People will say that, yeah, you know, if my partner's getting impatient, and then they'll say, yeah, that's really upsetting, and I'm upset because they're impatient. My state of mind was great until they got impatient.
Yeah.
And then to be able to view it from that vantage point, that they're struggling and they're having difficulty, it's such an amazing thing to consider, because it's like, yeah, it's just like, I don't have to take any responsibility in the sense of, and other than the fact that I see that it's nothing to do with my state of mind. It's to do with their state of mind. Well, it's to do with state of mind, just period. It's all state of mind.
That's right.
And I don't have to take that personally. But it's so, I'm sure that the rule of thumb generally for a lot of people is that, yeah, if they weren't impatient, I wouldn't get upset.
Yeah.
And then I think it gets confusing for people, because then they think this is all about state of mind, really. My state of mind was fine until they got impatient. But this is just an understanding that allows us to see, yeah, I don't need to take that personally because they're struggling. That's such a huge paradigm shift.
In a way, you're saying, what does that have to do with me that they're struggling with?
Right.
No, it just means that they're struggling, and it's independent of me. Now, it would be helpful if I was compassionate of her, of the fact that someone's struggling, but it's not at the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is, if I'm taking it personally, then that's on me.
Yeah.
Another concept, and I don't know how well this is going to go over, but in the business world, there'll be conversations, and in that conversation, someone will say, oh, I don't know about this situation because it has hair on it. That's how they say it in the business world. I don't know about
It's got fungal hair on it.
because it has hair on it. And they know exactly what the hair is there's an emotional component to it. And the business world doesn't like an emotional component. You don't want to deal with something that has hair on it because it's sticky.
So it's like having hair on it is really another way of saying they're taking it personally.
Yeah, they're taking it personally. There's unfinished business attached to it. Now, the thing that's interesting to me is everybody knows what that means. So anybody would say, gee, this is not good. This has got hair on it.
I'm going to say that to you.
And everybody understands that if you go ahead with something that has hair on it, you're going to have the hair on you.
Right.
Mm.
So you got to be philosophically bald.
Yeah, you got to be philosophically bald. That's exactly right.
The next time we get into spat, I can say, "Oh, it's getting a bit hairy for my liking."
Yeah,
Definitely.
exactly.
You're going to be saying, you're getting a bit hairy for my
right.
liking.
Right.
When I was like with people like Kevin Gleason or Steve Adams, they would point that out. That they'd say, "Well, I don't know about." She's like, "Well, I wish this didn't have a hair on it." And yet, if you said to them, "What do you mean by taking things personally, and what do you mean by something that's upsetting and difficult to deal with?" They'd have no idea what you're talking about. That interesting, but they understand the concept of hair on it. They know that that's not good to have hair, and they know what to do about it.
Uh-huh.
Well, we got to go back to the drawing board on this one. Well, that's amazing that they understand it so well.
We should rename our podcast "Unwanted Hair Removal."
Yeah.
Relationship and unwanted hair removal.
Well, I was just thinking, well, this is giving a whole new understanding to the term hairy eyeball.
Yeah, really.
Well, that's great. And I love what you're pointing to in terms of people have a feel for that and their common sense kicks in when they understand. But what happens in relationship is that we lose perspective and we lose our common sense often. And that situation that you and Linda were talking about is really common. Like Angus will say to me, like, you're being really stern, and that's me being tight. And if he's able to see that with perspective, then he sees I'm struggling. But if he doesn't have perspective, he'll get defensive, like you're saying, and try to tell me why I shouldn't be stern and why he's doing something right. And it usually goes south from there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the past, I would have taken it personally, and then I might have even as gone as far as to think, well, what does this mean about me? Why am I so affected by this? Why am I so insecure in the face of her impatience? Yeah. And then want to go digging in there, and my state of mind goes even further south.
Yeah.
When I can put the onus on her and her state of mind, it's like, she's just caught up.
But I think that people don't like being criticized.
Right.
Categorically don't like being criticized, and so they react to criticism, get defensive. But if, like, you see that it's coming out of a state of mind, that they wouldn't be criticizing you if they were in a different state of mind. Yeah. Because there's always when you get in a certain state of mind, there's always something to criticize. Right?
Yeah.
And I mean, whether you do it silently or overtly, when you get in a certain state of mind, there's always something to criticize. You can always find something. But I think that, that understanding that, it's about state of mind is really helpful.
I love what they're saying here. And as always, I love George's metaphors and George's stories. And I love this idea of it being hair, or it has hair on it. I guess I heard it as being hairy. And it's interesting, isn't it? It's how a sense of neutrality gets lost and emotional content comes in to a situation. I'm thinking of, I have had a couple of clients who are lawyers. One in particular was a defense lawyer, and would talk about going into a courtroom, and as soon as that sense of neutrality was lost, and the emotion came in where the other person was taking it personally, he kind of had them in the palm of his hand. So neutrality was a very important commodity in that courtroom, as it is in a relationship. And as soon as emotional content comes in where someone is taking it personally, things become problematic. But I love this idea, it has hair on it. So that's so George. It's such a brilliant metaphor. He is the metaphor king. And I really look up to him in that sense. It's like I try to employ the use of metaphors, but he's always the person that that I think, what would George say in this situation?
Well, I think you have great metaphors too. And that metaphor is very apropos right now with our husky who's in his spring blow. Is that what they call it? His coat is blowing.
I think his coat is blowing.
That's what they call
Yes,
it.
they do. They do.
Every piece of black clothing that I have has
Oh
hair
my
on
goodness, yeah. I'm wearing black clothing today and I made the mistake of hugging him. I now look like I have a two-tone Angora sweater.
But I do think it's important to recognize that relationships aren't like business. And so we're going to be really hairy in relationships.
Yeah.
If you don't want to get hair on you, then you probably are better off not being in relationship.
It's true, exactly. Hair is a part of a relationship.
And that it's an integral part of our own growth, too. That's what I really appreciate about personal relationships, and especially romantic, intimate relationships, is I feel that I'm constantly growing and learning about myself and seeing things more deeply because I have to. There's just no way to not be in relationship in a way that is loving and open and intimate without having to see things more deeply within myself about what gets in the way of that.
Yeah, and I guess for me, and I'm sure it is for most people now with this understanding under their belt, is that when one notices that one's taking the other person's behavior personally, it is actually a good indicator that one's state of mind has gone south. And that's a really good awareness to build upon.
And when state of mind goes south, it's just an opportunity to be gentle and kind with ourselves, know we're going to come back into balance, but also recognize that we're on the edge, we're on our growing edge. And that's a good place to be. We want to be growing. Like, that's a beautiful thing about us as human beings. We're always growing in consciousness. And so when things get hairy, it just means that we're on the edge of that growth point.
Yeah, well put.
And this next section is really beautiful because George is sharing what he's seeing more deeply for himself after his stroke.
Well, one thing, we have this, and this is this thing, the benefit of the stroke that I had. I have a fondness for Linda that is that's there all the time. It's an ongoing fondness, so it's there all the time. Like when I go to bed at night, I can feel that fondness. If I look at her in the kitchen, I have that fondness. So it seems to be omnipresent.
Omnipresent.
Omnipresent
But
fondness.
now I feel like you had that fondness for me before the stroke.
Well, it was interrupted.
By things.
Yeah, by
You're
moments when I was upset with you
or distracted by something.
Yeah,
else.
or distracted by something. So this is wall to wall fondness. Whereas before the stroke, I had intermittent fondness. Now I thought intermittent fondness was pretty good. I thought, that was
how relationships were.
Yeah.
But I mean, we've always had I would say, a really good partnership since we met Syd. And we met Syd very early on in our relationship. We'd only been together for about a year before we met Syd. And then maybe 2 years into our relationship, where what Syd was teaching was really taking hold of us and turning our relationship around. But because before we met Syd, we had a whole lot of conflict in our relationship. That was hard. It was really difficult. I mean, it was very hard on us, the conflict that we had. And then after we met Syd, we had less conflict. And then the conflict we did have, it just didn't have the hold on us. It didn't affect us like it did before we met Syd. So it's funny because after we met Syd, things that were negative or hard, we either held them lightly, or if it got intense, we'd forget about it really fast. It's not something we would remember. You know, I mean, we wouldn't hold it and nurse it. We try to get it into the distant past as fast as possible. After we met Syd, when things were difficult and when there was conflict, we'd try to get away from it as fast as we could.
You wouldn't take it so seriously.
Well, it wasn't that. It was different than that. It was like if we had an intense conflict after and we took it really seriously, and then we could see ourselves starting to get over it, we would get over it as fast as we could, move in the direction of getting over it and not remembering it. In other words, we just wouldn't go into the past about it. Do you remember that?
Well, I thought of it differently after my stroke, because I took my fondness went to a whole nother level.
That's true.
So that I was spared a lot of discomfort. So before that, there was some discomfort, and we had a learning curve where there was less discomfort.
We were really good. We were really good at getting over stuff.
Yeah.
As a partnership. We were amazing at getting over stuff after we met Syd. And now what you're saying is there's nothing to get over.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that this fondness protects us from
having to get over things.
Having to get over
getting into things that we have to get over. Yeah. The fondness protects us from getting into things that we would have had to get over. That's true.
Linda, when you were talking about how your relationship shifted after hearing Syd speak and the difference in conflict, how it was a lot of conflict and then really minimal, even if you still had to get over it a little bit at that point, what was so helpful about what Syd shared that allowed that shift to happen?
There were two things about it that were really helpful. One is that Syd really showed us that your thinking changes with your mood, and you don't want to have low mood conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And that helped us unbelievably, because it seemed like we were just constantly having low mood conversations. We'd start talking from a low mood and we just learned to stop it. And it really helped our relationship, because, you know, you start a low mood conversation, it could go on for hours, and then you take a break and you start it the next day. And then the other thing is, like, that really helped us is the understanding of separate realities, and that people think differently, and there's no right or wrong necessarily in the way people think, and that you can agree to disagree, and you don't, you know, just people see different. In a sense, in the secular world, meaning the world of thought, in the secular world, in the world of thought, everybody has the right to think the way they want to think. And you don't necessarily have to work it out and agree on things. You could just respect each other's point of view. And so in my mind, I don't know if George would agree, but we kind of let each other have their each opinion, and not feel like we had to have the same opinion about things or do things the same way. And then the other thing was the arbitrariness of thought. How people think. So this is what I saw. I don't know if George saw this, but how arbitrary thinking is, and that we'll get attached to an arbitrary way of going about things having to do with thought. That, for example, I wasn't right about being impatient. I was just impatient. So that was an arbitrary way of thinking. Or I wasn't right about being bothered by things. It was just an arbitrary way of thinking. We just saw that so much of my positions or opinions or habits or way of being that I was, say, that didn't work out or that would create conflict, I realized with conflict between us or conflict in myself, there was no basis of truth.
Yeah.
That was unbelievably helpful to see that in most of my ways of thinking, it wasn't based in truth.
What I resonated with is that everybody has a learning curve. As soon as they see truth, they have a learning curve. So you could go back in a couple's history, and you could see it. It would be very tangible. You'd see how it took them less time to get over things. They were very resilient. There were very observable benefits that Syd was pointing to. Very observable benefits. And it didn't matter how sharp a person learning curve. It only mattered if they had a learning curve.
I think what he's saying is that for us, even though our relationship in some ways was just a big old mess, we saw our learning curve. So we could see the progress. And so it didn't matter how bad we were, because we could see ourselves moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's really hopeful.
It was very hopeful. So we felt that even though, say, we argued more than we liked, or we just,
we knew that things were headed
in the right direction. So in a way, it didn't matter to us.
Yeah.
It takes the pressure off, is what I'm hearing. It's like you don't have to rush. You just know that it's unfolding and improving, and that's natural.
Exactly.
You can kind of relax into the relationship.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because so we would get in conflict and have a fight, and then we'd feel bad about it, and then we'd realize, oh, it wasn't as bad, or it was shorter, or we forgave faster. So we started noticing our improvements, and that mattered.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something. It was a game changer, because we knew that we were improving, and we knew that a learning curve was in offering, so that we weren't hopeless. We weren't concerned about ourselves. We weren't concerned about the other person. So it really made a big difference when we turned the corner. It really put things in perspective for us.
You were able to take the relationship off your mind and not have it be something to think about or fix or worry about.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what? I've been thinking about how we pretty much had a continual feeling of respect and regard and unity in our relationship and confidence that we could work things out. Like we had each other's back. And I don't know, there was kind of a continual feeling of a united front.
Yeah.
And mutual respect and support that was constant after we met Syd. I mean, it was incremental and we built towards it. And then it became at some point locked in, and it was just this kind of, we were just together. So instead of there being a favorite moment, to me, it was, I don't know, this feeling of constant support and unity and respect and being on each other's side. And it's kind of like this hum.
Yeah.
You know, at some point after we worked things out, kind of got on the same page and worked it all out, we just got connected in that way.
It's the hum of fondness.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Fondness. I like that.
I don't know that I ever really appreciated. I think I took it for granted.
Yeah.
The sum is greater than the parts. When you really stop fighting, or you don't take fighting seriously, you stop competing. It's a way of being on each other's side that is so helpful and rich. And it's hard for me to describe, but well, I do understand why people don't get there is because they're competitive, or they're, take things personally, or they get righteous about their position, or so there's a lot of little things that keep them from being a united front. But once you take those little things that tally away, those little things away, and you become a united front, it's just an incredible way to live.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You become really bulletproof.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So everything works for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the magic of it to me.
The way you talk about how your relationship was impacted listening to Syd, I feel that that's how you impacted me in our relationship.
That's right.
Wow, thank you.
The way that you're describing your experience of the relationship, I realized that before learning from you, I would be so caught up in my personal position, my righteousness, all of that petty thinking in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that the relationship was about my needs be met better. Now I look at it and how selfish that was, but I didn't see that at the time.
That's really
That's profound
thing to see. Yeah, because it's when people get self-absorbed into what they need and then positional about how they think, and it just keeps you from being a united front.
Yeah.
It makes the relationships seem transcendent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's another thing you can say. That's powerful.
Yeah.
It takes you out of you and them.
Yes.
And then it's.
Yeah. For the relationship, you transcend each person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say. You said it. It transcends you.
Yeah. And that's what's so amazing. Like the way that you're talking about your relationship, it is transcendent, those qualities. But from sort of the before, it looked like, well, no, I need to get my needs met in order to enjoy my relationship. But when I let my needs go, when I realize how petty they are and how selfish they are, what's available on the other side is so much greater and richer and deeper and more powerful and beautiful. And as you're saying, bulletproof. Like, I feel like, I mean, I don't want to be cocky, but I do feel like our relationship is bulletproof now. I feel like we could handle anything that comes our way because of the transcendent qualities that we experience more often than not. Maybe not all the time, but a lot of the time, and certainly in a way that we didn't experience it before. We weren't quite sure where to include this next segment, and then Angus, you thought it would be good to end on.
Yeah, I think it's going to be not in the same way that you might have the outtakes at the end of the movie. It was just, where do we put this? It needs to be in there. But it's just George sharing one of his really fond memories of Linda. And I thought it was a really sweet moment.
It's really touching.
Yeah.
One of the fondest memories for me is you with your overalls.
Which overalls?
You have those overalls.
Oh, the tan ones.
Yeah, that make you look like
a farmer.
Yeah. I love that memory
Of me in my overalls.
Yeah. It's a very, very fond memory.
Well, I have a fond memory of you in that. Remember that kind of lavender string T-shirt that you used to wear in Berkeley?
I want to see a picture of that.
Me too.
Remember that?
No, I don't.
You had this string.
What's lavender? What's a synonym for
purple? It was purple, and it wasn't so much string. It was like
Well, like a string vest kind of thing?
It was like a vest, yeah, but for summer. And I just remember you wearing that all the time, and I really liked it on you.
Oh.
Thank you so much for listening to Rewilding Love. If you enjoyed this podcast, please let us know by subscribing on iTunes, and we would love for you to leave a review there.
iTunes reviews will steer people to this podcast who need help with their relationships.
If you would like to learn more about our work and our online rewilding community, please visit our website, therewilders.org.
Thanks for listening. Join us next week.